Both the states of New York and Pennsylvania are two large northeastern states, with New York being ranked 4th in population and Pennsylvania 5th. Geographically, both states have a lot of similarities in that they have high populations and are relatively large physically for the Northeast. Let's compare both in the latest State Comparison Series episode. The Northeastern United States is home to older previous colonies of the United Kingdom. New York and Pennsylvania are two of them. Pennsylvania, previously known as the Province of Pennsylvania, was the second state admitted to the Union on December 12, 1787. And New York, previously known as the Province of New York, was the 11th state admitted to the Union on July 26, 1788. Throughout the 18th century, New York played a pivotal role in the American Revolution, hosting significant battles and serving as the capital of the newly formed United States for a time. After the war, it became a hub for commerce and immigration, with Ellis Island welcoming millions of newcomers in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Also during the American Revolution, Pennsylvania played a vital role, hosting the Continental Congress in Philadelphia and witnessing the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. The state was also the site of key battles, like the Battle of Gettysburg during the Civil War. The Industrial Revolution saw Pennsylvania emerge into an economic powerhouse, particularly in the steel and coal production. In recent years, New York and Pennsylvania are still large important states that both have similarities and differences. In today's State Comparison Series episode, we are going to compare New York and Pennsylvania. The video will focus on both physical geography and human geography. In terms of physical geography, we will review three main factors: the geomorphology, meteorology, and ecology, while with human geography, we will review four main factors: the demography, urbanization, economy, and geopolitics. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to my channel, Our World, Our Planet, Our Home, if you enjoy learning about geography and earth science. Let's get started. Geomorphologically, both New York and Pennsylvania share some things in common. Both states share both low-lying and mountainous areas within each other. Coastally, New York consists of all of New York City, Long Island, and counties such as Westchester and Rockland counties. Geologically, this area of the state is low in elevation, but all the areas here do have some rolling hills and even small mountains. The Atlantic Ocean and other brackish and freshwater water bodies, such as the Long Island Sound, Hudson River, East River, and the New York Harbor surround this area. The New York Harbor is regarded as being one of the best natural harbors in the world, which has led to New York City becoming one of the world's most important cities. Upstate and inland, New York becomes more mountainous as the Appalachian Mountains run through the state. The Catskill Mountains, a dissected plateau geologically related to the Appalachians, has 4,000 plus foot mountains, with Slide Mountain being the highest of them at 4,190 feet. But well upstate, the Adirondack Mountains are even higher, with New York's highest peak, Mount Marcy, being situated there at 5,343 feet. Further north and west, New York becomes flatter again, especially near the shores of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Pennsylvania is quite like New York in that it's split into coastal and more mountainous areas. In and around Philadelphia, the state has relatively low elevation, and at the banks of the Delaware River, it's sea level. But further west, the Appalachian Mountains run through Pennsylvania from the southwest to the northeast, creating a rugged terrain. Mount Davis, at the border of Maryland, is the highest peak at 3,213 feet. However, the Allegheny and Pocono sections of the Appalachian Mountains have peaks that are plus 2,000 feet. In far west near Ohio, Pennsylvania becomes less mountainous, similarly to New York. The meteorology of New York and Pennsylvania are very similar to the geomorphology, as both states are split between two distinct climatic zones, humid subtropical and humid continental. Coastal New York features a humid subtropical climate, which is associated with hot and humid summers and cool to sometimes mild winters with some rain and snow, with nor'easters being the largest and most powerful storms that occur between October and April. New York City has somewhat of a microclimate, as the city is warmer than the surrounding suburbs, which is called an urban heat island effect. This contributes to low temperatures in the winter being significantly warmer than the suburbs. Upstate, the climate turns to a humid continental type, which features warm to hot and humid summers and cold and relatively snowy winters. The higher mountains of the Adirondacks and Catskills can get a lot of snow, even into the spring months, and the lower elevations near Lake Ontario and Lake Erie receive lake effect snow, which can contribute to feet of snow per storm. Cities most affected by this include Watertown, Syracuse, Oswego, Rochester, and Buffalo. Pennsylvania is also split climatically into a humid subtropical area and humid continental area. In and around Philadelphia, areas are humid subtropical, and like New York City, Philadelphia does have an urban heat island effect, making the city warmer, particularly at night. Coastal Pennsylvania does see very similar meteorological conditions to the New York metropolitan area, and does see storms such as nor'easters that can create rainy, snowy, and windy conditions. Inland, the climate type switches to humid continental. The higher elevations of the Allegheny and Pocono Mountains may see more snowy conditions in the winter and may have a delayed spring. Further north and west, locations on Lake Erie, such as the city of Erie, may receive a lot of lake effect snow. On to ecology, New York and Pennsylvania once again share many similarities, as both states are in temperate biomes, meaning all 4 seasons occur. In urbanized areas of New York, many species can survive with humans. One, especially in New York City, is the brown rat. This rat is able to live in dense urban areas with copious amounts of trash to feed on, and it's seen as a pest. Other city-dwelling animals include squirrels, various types of reptiles and amphibians, raccoons, and occasionally coyotes. In suburban areas outside New York City, the same types of species are present, but also include deer, skunks, and foxes. Coastally, many sea creatures make their habitats, including sea turtles, various mollusk species, and sea mammals such as whales, dolphins, and seals. Upstate, New York has a significant amount of forested land, with the Adirondack and Catskill Mountains being prominent forested regions. These forests provide habitats for a variety of wildlife, including deer, black bears, and a diverse bird population. In terms of plants, New York is varied. New York City and the immediate surrounding areas can support many plant types, including many deciduous species and even subtropical ones such as hardy palms. In upstate inland New York, the state's forests are home to various tree species, including hardwoods like maple, oak, and beech, as well as coniferous trees such as white pine and spruce. In Pennsylvania, the ecology is also very mixed. Pennsylvania's cities such as Philadelphia and Pittsburgh have unique urban ecologies with green spaces, parks, and urban wildlife such as squirrels, foxes and coyote, raccoons, skunks, and brown rats. Further inland, Pennsylvania becomes heavily forested, and animal species here include deer, black bears, turkeys, and many bird species. In terms of plant life, Pennsylvania is comparable to New York, as the coastal southeastern locations support deciduous trees, and to a lesser extent, subtropical hardy palms, while the inland areas are comprised of a variety of tree species, including oak, maple, cherry, and hemlock. Now that we talked about physical geography, let's focus in on human geography, first with demography. Both New York and Pennsylvania are diverse, but New York seems to have more, especially in and around New York City. On a whole, the state of New York is 55.5% white, 19.5% Hispanic, 15.1% black, and 10.1% Asian. However, New York City, with 8.3 million of the 19.6 million people within the state, is extremely diverse, with 30.9% white, 28.7% Hispanic, 20.2% black, and 15.6% Asian. Being that New York City has historically been a gateway for immigration, this is why the city is racially and ethnically mixed. New York City has dozens of ethnic neighborhoods, including Little Italy, Chinatown, the African American neighborhood of Harlem, the Chinese neighborhood of Flushing, Queens, and the Jewish neighborhood of Crown Heights. In fact, New York City is home to 1.6 million Jews, the largest outside Israel. The surrounding suburbs are also diverse, but to a lesser extent. However, most of rural upstate New York is mostly white, with blacks being the largest minority group, with most situated in urban areas such as Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo. Pennsylvania, on a whole, is majority white, with 76.6%, while blacks, Hispanics, and Asians make up 11.8%, 8.1%, and 4.5% of the population. But, like New York State, it's place-specific. For example, major cities such as Philadelphia and Pittsburgh have high black populations as well as many ethnic enclaves, including European ones such as Italians and Polish, and Asian ones which include Chinese, Koreans, and Vietnamese. In rural parts of the state, the population is majority white. Urbanization patterns within New York and Pennsylvania share many parallels. For one, each state has one very large metropolis, New York City and Philadelphia, while the rest of the cities within the states are medium to small sized. New York City has 8.3 million residents and a metropolitan area of 20 million, the largest in the nation. Nassau and Suffolk counties on Long Island have 3 million, Westchester County has 1 million, and Rockland County has around 340,000. But two other states, New Jersey and Connecticut, are part of the metropolitan area, with northern part of central Jersey and southwestern Connecticut being associated with it. Second to New York City is Buffalo, which has 278,000 residents and a metropolitan population of 1.2 million. In recent decades, Buffalo has seen a rapid decrease in population due to it being a Rust Belt city and industrialization being outsourced. Other than that, rounding out the top 5 largest cities in New York is Yonkers, a suburb due north of the Bronx, Rochester, and Syracuse. In terms of statewide infrastructure, New York has an extensive highway system, with roads such as I-95, I-87, and I-90, collectively known as the New York Thruway, and I-81. Pennsylvania's largest city, Philadelphia, has 1.6 million residents and a metropolitan area population of 6.2 million, 7th in the nation. Like New York City, Philadelphia has suburbs not only within Pennsylvania, but in 2 other states, New Jersey and Delaware. Much of South Jersey and part of Central Jersey are included in the Philadelphia metropolitan area. Pittsburgh, with a population of nearly 303,000 residents, is the second largest city, and its metropolitan population is 2.4 million. Although Pittsburgh was a Rust Belt city, it didn't suffer like Buffalo and other regionally connected cities with population loss. Rounding out the top 5 in Pennsylvania is Allentown, a community in far eastern Pennsylvania, Reading, northwest of Philadelphia, an area in the far northwestern part of the state on Lake Erie. Pennsylvania has a very well-developed road network, and some major highways that traverse the state include I-80, an interstate running from San Francisco, California to Teaneck, New Jersey, I-81, which goes into upstate New York, the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and I-78, which runs from Union Township, Pennsylvania to Lower Manhattan in New York City. In terms of economics, both states have large GDPs, as New York and Pennsylvania have large populations. New York has a state GDP of over $2 trillion, making it third in the nation. Since New York City is considered one of the largest global financial centers in the world, with London being the other, it has a city GDP of $1.5 trillion, 75% of New York State's economy. The New York Stock Exchange, situated in Lower Manhattan, is the largest stock exchange in the world in terms of market capitalization. Besides finance, the state has a growing technology sector, particularly in and around New York City, but also in areas like Silicon Alley and Manhattan. New York has a robust healthcare industry with many prestigious hospitals, medical research institutions, and pharmaceutical companies. The state is a leader in healthcare research and innovation. New York is home to numerous universities and colleges, including Ivy League institutions like Columbia and Cornell universities. The higher education sector plays a significant role in the state's economy, contributing both through tuition and research activities. Some well-known companies headquartered in New York include J.P. Morgan Chase, IBM, Verizon Communications, Corning Incorporated, known for glassmaking, and JetBlue Airways. Pennsylvania has a state GDP of $923 billion, ranked 6th in the nation. Initially, the state was a large industrial powerhouse, but in recent decades, Pennsylvania has diversified their economy into more sectors. The industrial sector is still strong, but has evolved with a focus on advanced manufacturing, chemicals, machinery, and food processing. The state has a growing energy sector with a mix of traditional fossil fuels and renewable energy resources. Natural gas production, in particular, has boomed in areas where there is shale rock, thanks to the fracking industry. The healthcare and pharmaceutical industries are important contributors to the state's economy. Pennsylvania hosts several major healthcare systems, research institutions, and pharmaceutical companies. Pennsylvania is home to numerous prestigious universities and colleges, including the University of Pennsylvania, Carnegie Mellon University, and Penn State University. These institutions are not only centers of learning, but also important economic drivers for their respective regions. And Pennsylvania is known for agriculture, particularly dairy farming, poultry, and various crops. The state is a significant producer of milk, mushrooms, and apples. Companies headquartered in the state include the Hershey Company, a very well-known chocolate company based out of the community of Hershey, the Comcast Corporation, a telecommunications company, Aramark, a food services company, and Dick's Sporting Goods, a popular sporting goods and outdoor retailer with a nationwide presence. The geopolitics of both New York and Pennsylvania is complex, especially seen in recent elections. Today, both states are generally seen as Democratic strongholds. In the late 19th century and early 20th century, New York voted Republican a majority at a time for president, but this slowly switched in the 1930s when Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a Democrat state senator and governor of New York, won the 1932 U.S. presidential election and won New York. In 1936, 1940, and 1944, Roosevelt won the presidential elections and New York. From the 1940s to the 1980s, New York switched back and forth between Democrats and Republicans for presidential candidates. However, since the 1988 presidential election, the state has voted exclusively Democrat. Today, federally, New York has two Democrat senators, Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand. But in terms of the House of Representatives, it's very mixed. In and around New York City, many representatives are Democrat, but in some suburbs and rural areas, it's more Republican-leaning. On a state level, New York is democratically run, with Democrat Kathy Hochul as governor. Although, in the 2022 gubernatorial election, Hochul won the election by a slim margin over Republican Lee Zeldin, possibly showing a sign of change within the state. Like New York, Pennsylvania was more of a Republican-leaning state in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In the 1912 presidential election, the state voted for third-party progressive candidate and former Republican U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt. Since that election, Pennsylvania has gone back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. However, since 1992, it started to vote Democratic candidates in. This all changed, though, in 2016. In this presidential election, Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton was polling ahead of Republican candidate Donald Trump nationwide and in Pennsylvania. But Trump won three important states to win the Electoral College: Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. This was the first time in 24 years that Pennsylvania elected a Republican, with the razor-thin margin of 48.18% to 47.46%. By 2020, Pennsylvania again voted for Democrat Joe Biden by a thin margin of 50.01% to 48.84%. Because of these closer elections, Pennsylvania federally is now seen as a swing state. In terms of the U.S. Senate, Pennsylvania was split until 2023 when the senators were Democrat Bob Casey and Republican Pat Toomey. But in 2020, Toomey said he would not run for re-election in 2022. This resulted in an election between two new candidates, Democrat John Fetterman, former Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania, and Republican Mehmet Oz, a television medical doctor personality. Ultimately, Fetterman won the election. On the state level, Pennsylvania has Democrat elected officials. The current governor is Democrat Josh Shapiro, who was elected in 2022 and beat Republican candidate Doug Mastriano. By both states being in the Northeast, New York and Pennsylvania will continue to be important places for the United States. However, in the last decade or so, both states have seen population stagnation, and in the last 2 years, New York and Pennsylvania have lost population, decreasing by 2.6% and 0.6% respectively. There are a multitude of factors behind this. One is Rust Belt emigration, as both states had large industrial sectors before the 1970s. Another has to do with the changing demographics. More baby boomers are retiring, and ones living here are moving to more climatically favorable states in the South, such as the Carolinas and Florida. An economic factor is the astronomical cost of living, especially in New York City. In the last few years, people have moved out of the city to move to somewhat cheaper and larger dwellings, including ones in northern New Jersey. Ultimately, both New York and Pennsylvania will change throughout the 21st century. That concludes the comparison episode about New York and Pennsylvania. Thank you so much once again for watching this week's episode. If you enjoy geography and earth science content, this is a channel to watch. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, Our World, Our Planet, Our Home. Until next time!